have a book here that just came out, and this was written by my colleagues, other National Park Service biologists in Alaska. So this is brand new, it just came out. I recommend it. I'll pass it around if you guys want to look at the pictures. It's specific to Alaska. I also have a bear claw in here for you guys to, if you want to check it out. I can pass it around. It smells like cinnamon because it's been in a cinnamon Altoids thing. So this is from a brown bear. It's actually a smaller, on the smaller side end of the brown bear claws, but you can look at it. So I can just pass these around. I like to discuss like what qualifies me to do this training, and that's because one of the leading experts of bear-human interaction research always starts his presentations by saying, please ignore all of the conventional wisdom that you've been given, and all of the information that you've seen online, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and the information is changing as science. Science is iterative, and so last year we may have thought one thing, and with new research now, we know something else and something better. So not only that, but even within the National Park Service, we have not been consistent in our messaging, unfortunately. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about my background, my experience. I've always loved animals, and so my first job was raising and training exotic animals for like movies and advertisements, TV shows, and things like that. It was unfortunately too akin to Tiger King, which maybe all of you are familiar with, that I would have liked it to be. It was a really amazing experience for myself, but I felt like it was a selfish experience, where you're exploiting animals and to make money. And so I had great hands-on experience with bears, tigers, lions, wolves, everything. But I wanted to go back to school and do something better for them. And so that is what motivated me to go through all of the schooling that I went through. I got my bachelor's in zoology, my master's in ecology and evolution, and my PhD in ecology and evolution. It was like over 15 years of post-high school. But I dropped out of high school, actually. I got my GED. So from GED to PhD, it's possible. I have worked in bear territory over 20 years. But again, people can work in bear territory without incidents for 20, 50 years, and it doesn't mean I've been doing it correctly. It could mean that the bears have been doing all the compromising, and that's often what happens, I'm not here to tell you really about my experiences. I'm here to tell you about what the science says, because really it's the science that can tell us the most about the nuances of, human-bear interactions. Every bear is different. They all have different personalities like we do, and they're different by species. There's a lot of things that go into our interactions with bears. And so it really takes all the research to be able to enlighten us and show us the patterns that can help us to mitigate human-bear interactions. And so really I'm here to tell you about what the science says. Further, I just completed a workshop last year with all of the bear experts from the state. We all got together to discuss our bear strategies and to try to provide a more uniform message when teaching bear safety. So this is really the most up-to-date information that we have right now that I'm going to give you. So that was a long-winded introduction. So for the National Park Service, when researchers and and visitors coming to our parks, we have minimum training components that were required to teach, and these are just some of them. Unfortunately, we don't have 3 hours tonight to go over all this, so I'm going to abbreviate this. I'm going to try to give you information that I think is the most valuable. So I'll touch on almost everything in here, but I'm going to do it some of them very quickly. And I'm going to sit down because I'm a more casual person, if that's okay. So I want you to focus on this and not So please let me know if you can't hear me, if you have a question, if I need to make something, if I need to clarify anything. So as an evolutionary biologist, I feel like bear behavior, in order to understand bear behavior, predict motivation, and prevent conflict, it's really important to be aware of some general bear ecology and evolution. And I think it's better to understand it this way than just to memorize actions and reactions. Like, if a bear does this, I need to do this. And again, that's because everyone's different, every bear is different. And so I hope by the end of this you'll recognize that we can be empowered when we have a greater understanding of the ecology and evolutionary history of bears. So in Alaska and in North America, we have 3 different bear species. Each differ in their ecology and evolutionary history. One species are brown bears, and another word for brown bears is grizzly bears. They're both the same. We also have black bears, and unfortunately, the names are misnomers. They don't really. Brown bears can be any color. Black bears can be any color. So it really has nothing to do with the color. But typically, brown bears are larger than black bears. They have prominent shoulder humps. I'm going to show you a picture next, which kind of shows a little bit of a difference. They have smaller ears. They have longer claws. And these are morphological differences that are evolutionary adaptations to their differences in ecology. So long claws for brown bears are really good for rooting and digging up small mammals. Brown bears eat lots of roots, so especially right after they come out of hibernation. But they're not very good for climbing, having these huge nails. They can climb, they do climb, but they're not avid climbers like black bears are. And like I said, they can be in any color from dark brown to cinnamon to nearly white ones. I've seen nearly white ones. Black bears are the smallest bears in North America. They're the most abundant bears. They are subordinate to brown bears, so they live on the margins of brown bear habitat, because brown bears will kill black bears. They will fiercely go after black bears. And so black bears have to be really careful. They live on the margins of brown bear habitat, and they can overlap, their territories can overlap in really resource-rich areas, like around here at Eagle River. They prefer forested habitat. They are avid climbers. In fact, black bears den in the forest, and their cubs spend a lot of the time in the trees. It's a safe spot for them. They are not found north of the Brooks Range, which is where I work, but they're found all around here. So, and they could be expanding northward. Who knows? And then polar bears are our third bear species. They're actually considered marine mammals. And today I'm just going to focus on terrestrial bears. It's very unlikely that you're going to ever come across a polar bear here. So here's just a quick diagram of a black bear versus brown bear. You can see the distinctive shoulder hump that brown bears have. They have much longer claws. They are typically bigger, but not always. A black bear male can be quite bigger than a brown bear female. Brown bears have like a really dish-shaped face. Like when you're looking straight on, it's really kind of almost more flat and wide. Whereas black bears have more of an elongated face. And And then their tracks are different. So you can see the brown bear front paws, their toes are really all in a single line, whereas the black bear's, that pinky toe is more arched and kind of not in line with the others. And it's important to be able to identify them because they are very different in their reactions to humans. And so your reaction to black bear and brown bears are going to be very different. And we'll discuss that soon. Okay, so there's, knowledge of bear seasonal ecology is important for understanding. There's temporal differences, and when I say temporal, I just mean differences in timing. Year differences, day differences, and there are these differences in timing basically contribute to differences in their motivations, and in their distribution. So one thing that I'll kind of say over and over again is that in Alaska, bear incidents have occurred every month of the year. So I get complacent in the winter. I think, they're sleeping, we're fine, but we shouldn't. We should always carry a deterrent when in bear country, even in the winter, because they have occurred every month of the year. But generally, from around September and October, they enter their dens and they go into what's called torpor. And I know most of you have heard hibernation, probably not torpor. Torpor is kind of like hibernation light. Their metabolism lowers, their heart rate lowers, their breathing lowers, but they're not in such a deep sleep. They can wake up. In fact, the mothers will wake up and have their cubs while in torpor, and then they'll go back to sleep. I bet a lot of mothers here wish that was possible. It's kind of opposite for us. They're in torpor for about 6 months of the year. They're in torpor longer in Alaska than anywhere else because it's colder here, and there's just not a lot of food for them in the winter, so they just this is their adaptive strategy. And then they emerge from their dens around April, May, and then they want to find food. There's not a lot of food on the ground, you'll see in the next slide, but they go right into mating. Unless the females have cubs, they won't mate that year, they take care of the cubs. And then July and August are times for really rich feeding. They have to gain a lot of weight in order to sleep through the winter, and their cubs have to gain a lot of weight to grow. Excuse me. And then they enter their dens, like I said, September, October. One really cool thing is that, it's cool to me anyway, as an evolutionary biologist, but so they mate in May or June, but they have what's known as delayed egg implantation. And so what happens is the egg is fertilized in May or June, but it doesn't implant into the uterus until November. And it won't implant into the uterus unless they get enough food to eat. So it's kind of like it's an evolutionary strategy that says if your environment's rich enough to raise offspring, then the egg will implant and they'll have offspring. If the environment is not good enough, then the egg will just resorb. So it's pretty cool. And the weight, it's basically about 150 pounds that they have to gain before that egg implants into the uterine wall. And then so 2 months after that, they have cubs. So it's really a short gestation. Yeah, right? So both brown and black bears are opportunistic omnivores. Everybody knows what omnivores are. They eat meat, they eat everything and anything. And so that means they do consume mammals and fatty fishes, but actually upwards of 75% of their diet consists of acorns, nuts, berries, leaves, and roots. So the majority of their diet is not meat. And this is important information because for the most part, bears don't view humans as food. Even when they're looking for meat, they don't view us. We're not their profile, their normal food profile. But then again, being opportunistic means they could view you as food. So as we'll discuss next, bears, like all animals, are risk averse, but they would have to be really desperate to view us as food and to, predate on us. So bears are semi-social animals. So they're not social like us. They don't live their daily lives in groups like wolves and lions and apes like ourselves. But they do interact regularly, and they use body language and vocalization to communicate. And the reason that they do this is to enables avoidance of conflict. And all animals prefer to avoid conflict. It's dangerous. The ultimate outcome is unknown, and every individual's goal is to stay alive. So all animals are wary of things that are unfamiliar to them. They all practice conflict avoidance, and they attempt to mitigate conflict. And all behavior is dictated by the selective pressures in our evolutionary history that attempt to balance costs and benefits. So when I say that, I think about, let's say we're talking about a male who's trying to look for food versus a female who's protecting her offspring. They have very different cost-balance ratios, right? So a male is not going to risk as much for one meal as a female is going to risk for saving her offspring. So by understanding bear body language and vocalization, we can capitalize on the information they present to each other, and we can communicate with bears ourselves and understand their communication and try to communicate back. So our interaction with bears can differ depending upon the bear, because again, they have different personalities, and depending upon the cohort. And cohort is just kind of like the different groups that we can come upon. So yearlings are basically the teenage kids. They just left their mothers, and curiosity is often their downfall. Like every single species, adolescent species, they're very curious and they get into trouble. And unfortunately, people who don't understand them mistake them for being predatory when they're actually just being curious. And so you deal with a yearling bear much different than you deal with an adult bear. Yearlings often, we find, will be the ones to test new things. Like they'll come closer to your chest. They're not, they're just really curious, and they don't understand yet the harm that can come from them, of this world. Just like teenagers, they think they're invincible. So, and so really, sometimes you have to be, in order to chase these guys away, if they're annoying you, you have to be kind of pretty loud and obnoxious. Maybe, sometimes it takes bear spray to get them away, or beating some pans and throwing some rocks at them. But that's not for everyone. That's just for the yearlings. You don't want to do that for an adult bear. Then you have mothers with cubs, and depending on species, it's extremely different. So brown bear mothers with cubs are extremely defensive, as Tino knows and has experienced himself. Whereas black bear mothers with cubs are not at all defensive. They basically run. And I've chased many, unfortunately, accidentally chased many black bear cubs up a tree, and the mother will run across, the way and kind of just watch and make sure, just hope that I don't hurt the bears. And then you have solo adults, and when we're talking about brown bears, the solo adult males have been historically the most dangerous. They've been involved in the most conflict, followed by mothers with cubs for brown bears. Brown bears reach sexual maturity at about 4 to 5 years, and they're full size at about 8 to 12 years, and their size can vary, and they're sexually dimorphic, so the males and females can vary in size from 400 to 1,500 pounds. So, yeah, they can be enormous. So now I'm going to just go into the scientific research, and after we do this, we'll go into more of how we deal with bears. So, basically, this is all of the research I'm going to go over are human-bear interaction research in Alaska, because Alaska bears are very different than lower 48 bears. They are not as acclimated to humans as lower 48 bears because of all the wilderness and land that we have here. So, by analyzing past incidents, we can learn from them, we can identify common variables, and then we can modify our behavior accordingly, because supposedly we're the more intelligent species, right? So not all human-bear interactions are reported. In fact, the most common non-confrontational encounters are very rarely reported, whereas almost all negative encounters are reported. And the worse the interaction, the higher report rating, and the greater post-encounter investigation. And so this leads to a really large bias in the existing data that we have on bear-human interactions. And it's really important that we report all of our interactions, both negative and positive, because without that, we can't get accurate knowledge of the true probability of a negative bear encounter. So, and also it leads to a much more sinister perception of bears, when we just get a lot of negative information. So on that note, media can have a very powerful effect on the way that we feel about animals, non-human animals. And although I do think it's important to discuss and understand attacks, it can lead to fear that's severely disproportionate to the risk. After I was big, I grew up in Florida, I was a surfer, and Jaws ruined me. I could not stop thinking about Jaws when I was in the water. And it was completely disproportionate to the risk, I've been on the wrong end of probability as well, so I can say all I want about probability, but it doesn't, negate the fact that it happens to people. So, but historically, this kind of media has led to mass culls of nearly all predators, terrestrial and marine. Wolves and bears have been nearly extirpated from many places in North America and elsewhere. And so, I feel we need to be aware of this human tendency and keep this in mind when taking action. Okay, so into the science, which is exciting for me, maybe a little more boring for you. So Tom Smith and Stephen Herrero are the leading experts on human-bear interactions in Alaska. They've been studying these interactions since the 70s. And in 2002, they have many, many journal articles, and I'm probably going to tell you multiple times. You can email me. If you want any of these articles, I can send them to you. If you have any questions, I can answer them, because I won't be able to answer them all here. So. But in 2002, Stephen Herrero used reported human brown bear, so this is brown bear, used reported human brown bear interactions to estimate the percentage of reaction types of brown bears when encountering humans. So he looked at all of the brown bear human interactions, and he determined what percentage of the time do they do this, what percentage of the time do they do this. So from this study, when brown bears encountered humans, out of all the interactions he studied, 70% of the time they avoided them. So the majority of the time they avoided people. 14% of the time they studied the human by approaching them, identifying them, and walking away. 12% of the time they acted indifferent, and 3% of the time they reacted with a threat demonstration, such as a bluff charge, or stomping, or slapping the ground, or vocalizing. And only 1% of the time do they attack. So, that's good news. So yeah, the majority of the time, 99% of the time, there was no actual harm to humans. So again, bear reactions are dependent upon multiple variables. They're dependent upon the distance at which the bear first notices you, which you'll see that's a very, very strong, the amount of exposure they have to humans, which can be good or bad, as you'll see soon, most bear attacks are defensive attacks, and they're due to surprise, which I kind of just ruined that for you, but I wouldn't surprise you that. But so exposure to humans for those bears is good because we won't surprise them as much, and they don't need to become as defensive. In other ways, if they become very acclimated to humans, then they may test their boundaries a little more. And so they're not as afraid, and so they may test or do some dominance testing with you. And that's where bear spray is very good. So by understanding these and changing our behavior in bear territory, we can help ensure that we get the preferred responses from bears. Bears are really smart. They're also very naive and credulous like little kids, and when we stand tall with our arms raised, they believe that we're taller and bigger than them. And so when you want to appear threatening to a bear or potentially dangerous to a bear, you want to stand as tall as possible and sound as loud as possible. It's not as easy for me. I'll probably have to carry something really big. But and then when you want to appear non-threatening, you want to hunker down, speak softly. I talk to them like a puppy. I get on my knees, and ultimately, our best defense is to understand their body language and react accordingly. And I've encountered all of these interactions except for attack, thankfully. And all of them were mitigated by slowly backing away, baby talking to bear, and lowering myself to say, hey, I'm not afraid. Here's a beautiful graph that, this is the graph from the paper that I just described. The next paper I'll discuss is Smith and Herrera's most recent comprehensive study of human-bear interactions. It was published in 2018. They used 682 human-bear interactions from Alaska that spanned 135 years, between 1880 and 2015. They used all the interactions that they could find enough information on. And all three species endemic to Alaska were included, so black, brown, and polar. And one thing to note about this is that this study only included incidents that could have led to human injury. It did not include the far more common non-incidental bear encounters. It didn't include the encounters where bears avoid you or dismiss or walk away from you. So it was only the encounters that either the bear exhibited stress-related or curious behavior, or the human had to take evasive action. And because of that, because this is just studying negative and not positive encounters, we can't say anything about the ratio of incidents to non-incidents or the likelihood of conflict when encountering a bear. But like I said, the prior study did show that. So one of the things they looked at was how timing affected the frequency of incidents. So they looked at timing across the day, timing across a year, and timing across many years. And as you can see from this graph, the average number of conflicts per year has increased over time quite significantly. So they did a regression to see how this was correlated to human population growth. And it is extremely correlated. So they found that basically the result was that bears are not getting more aggressive. It's just that our population is growing and we're out in the wild more and we're encountering bears more. And that's the reason for all this. Totally. So then they looked at within a year, what was the frequency of bear attacks every month or season. And so the majority of attacks occurred in summer, or incidents I should say, not all attacks, followed by autumn. And then spring and winter were actually the same. which to me was unusual because in spring they're coming out of their dens. I'm thinking they're really hungry and like maybe they risk more to eat, but it doesn't seem to be that way. And they were all attacks were also not randomly distributed throughout the day. So most attacks occurred between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. and the fewest occurred between 12 a.m. and 10 a.m. So sleeping bears, sleeping humans. So they analyzed differences in the likelihood to engage in conflict by bear species. And they found that brown bears were 6 times more likely to engage in conflicts than black bears. So out of all the interactions they studied, 78% of all the conflicts involved brown bears. So black bears were only involved in 13% of the conflicts, and polar bears only 2% of the conflicts. Now, there's a caveat. Polar bear conflicts are extremely rare, and that's because we're not on Arctic ice, very much. And so the sample size for this was 12, not a very robust sample size. So really, there's very little conclusions that we can draw from this study of polar bear behavior. There are other studies that have led to similar conclusions that they're not man-eaters that we've seen them to be. So again, we have to kind of take the polar bear research lightly because we don't have as much experience with them. So it's also important to keep in mind that, as we stated before, incidents did not equate to attacks. So 50% of all the incidents that occurred in the 135 years resulted in no human injury. 13% resulted in minor injury. And under 10% of incidents resulted in fatality. So a key difference, this study found, as well as other studies have found, that a key difference between black and brown bear species involved in conflicts is the involvement of family groups. And like I said before, black bear mothers and their cubs rarely engage with humans, whereas brown bear mothers and cubs had the second highest involvement in conflict. And it's believed these differences in temperament are likely due to differences in evolutionary history. And so we hypothesize that brown bears are most often involved in injurious human-bear conflicts because they evolved in the sparsely treed tundra of North America, where the best defense is having a good offense. So attack first and evaluate later. There's no place to run and hide in the tundra. Alternatively, black bear, evolved in forested areas, and so there were opportunities to avoid conflict by either climbing a tree or disappearing into the underbrush. So consequently, most human black bear interactions end with bears seeking refuge and cover, and the scarcity of black bear attacks in 135 years of history attest to this strategy. And every single time I've come across a black bear, that's what's happened. So the findings from this study support previous. So this is another thing, and this is a little confusing for people because we know now brown bears are the most dangerous bears, right? But this study and others have found that brown bears attack mostly out of defense. So, and we'll see that in a minute. Whereas black bears, when they attack, it's mostly predatory, which is a little strange. So, black bears very rarely attack, but when they do, it's because they want to prey on you. Most often, there's exceptions in every rule, but whereas brown bears, it's mostly defensive. And this is a good thing because since brown bears are involved in most of the conflict, that means we can really mitigate this by not surprising brown bears, right? So they looked at group size and how group size affected conflict, and they found that the smaller the group, the more likely that the attack occurred. So Solo individuals were involved significantly more than expected, whereas groups of 2 or more were involved significantly less than expected. You can see once you get over groups of 2, it significantly drops in size. And so encounter size is the blue and white stripe, group size is the orange, and basically it means like if we went out in a group of 7, our group would be the orange in a 7. But then let's say I go out to go to the bathroom and I encounter a brown bear and have a conflict, and I go alone, my encounter size is 1, the blue and white stripe. So you may want to take a bathroom buddy, is what I'm saying. So potential reasons why larger groups, do better are likely they represent a greater threat to a bear. They're way more risky, and we're louder. A larger group is louder and less likely to surprise a bear. So. They looked at habitat visibility to see how that affected incidents, and I think it's pretty obvious that the poorer the visibility, the more likely the conflict, the better the visibility, the less likely the conflict. Again, we can infer from that about their motivation that they're reacting because of surprise. When they can't see you and you all of a sudden are there very close to them, they are defensive and they're surprised. So, people, the tundra is relatively good visibility to forest, but it's still not great. I've had colleagues attacked by bears. One colleague, they were archaeologists. I blame that on them because they were not doing the right thing. They were not making enough noise. They thought they were in good visibility, but a bear can hide behind a willow like nothing you've seen. It's incredible. And so really, almost everywhere, you just want to make sure you're making enough noise that a bear will know you're there. So another thing they looked at was probable cause and provocation. So they basically what was the probable cause? Was it surprise? Was it predation? Was it carcass defense, etc.? And who initiated? Was it the bear or was it the human? And so they found that the majority, about 60% of the interactions was due to surprise. That was the biggest factor triggering a bear attack. And that, I'm sorry, reverse that. So the majority of bear interactions were human initiated. That's the 60%. So 60% of the attacks were human initiated, which is great for us because that means we have a lot, that we can do to mitigate this. And then surprise, among the human initiated interactions, surprise was the base factor. The next biggest factor was invading a bear's personal space, and that was 18%. And then the next one was wounding bears while hunting, and that was only 0.08%. And then stumbling upon a bear defending a carcass was the final one, 0.04%. Oh no, and then the final one was provoking a bear intentionally. I don't know why you do that, but 0.02% provoking a bear. I guess if you're throwing rocks at a bear, that may be provoking. When the interaction was initiated by the bear, that was 41% of the time. Curiosity was the greatest percentage. So 80% of the time, curiosity was the reason the bears initiated. That was followed by predatory motivation. So 20% of the interactions initiated by the bears was due to predatory motivation, but this was less than 1% of all the interactions. So that's good. So these results were consistent with other studies, again, that show that most brown bear conflicts seems to be defensive, where most black bear conflict is predatory in nature. And the reason why black bears likely are more risky and, are more apt to prey on us is because they live on the edge of human habitat, because they have to live on the margin of the brown bear habitat. The brown bears monopolize these resource-rich areas, and the black bears have to live on these outskirts. And so they have to be more risky to get their food, and they have to scavenge, and they operate in a space with less food, and just have to, risk more to obtain it, such as going after more dangerous prey like ourselves. So, in conclusion, the risk of aggressive bear encounters in Alaska is extremely low. Countless encounters have occurred without incident. Nonetheless, conflict does occur, and these findings can help us to reduce them. So, as you can see, we can have a tremendous influence over our outcome. The last thing they looked at was incident termination. So, what caused the bear to stop the interaction? And they found that 73% of the time the bears left the incident on their own. So the average time for an attack or an incident is less than 3 minutes, and they can do an inordinate amount of damage in 3 minutes. So. So 73% of the time they left the incident on their own. 18% of the time they were driven off by a rescuer. And so when a rescuer came when someone came to the rescue, they were successful in terminating the attack over 90% of the time. So if you come to the rescue, it's a really good chance that you will terminate the attack. There is a 10% chance that you will also be attacked. So it's up to you, depending on how close this person is to you, whether you have deterrent, And then in about 6% of incidents, domestic dogs intervened, and they were successful at terminating them all in 48% of the time. So, but in 5 instances, so about 12% of the time, the dog was likely responsible for inciting attack, either by bringing the bear back to its owners or barking and therefore tracking bears. But I still see this as dogs are really better. There's a greater probability of them doing good than doing harm. Okay, so now we're post-science. That's all the science I'm going to go into. Now we're going to go into how we protect ourselves and how we prepare. So this is, I do this presentation usually for researchers and park employees who go out in the field and go camping. And we live in bear country here. Our homes are in bear country. And so I'm going to try to kind of modify it for that. So first, bears require all the needs that we require. They need respect. They need personal space. Free of threats. And it's up to us to prepare appropriately, and we need to have a backup plan when we're in the backcountry or just living with bears. Before we go out, we need to think about the implications of the timing that we're out, the location that we're going, the number of people that are in our group, what safety gear we need, what deterrence we want or need, and we're going to discuss these details. But, it's our personal responsibility. Our safety is our personal responsibility. So there are 3 action categories for when dealing with bears, and they're prioritized in this order. It's avoidance first, right? Deterrence second, and if we can't deter, we need to survive. So, again, we do this by preparing mentally and physically before we go out. You guys are off to a right start by being here. Again, you can contact me with any questions. So, this is a map of our game unit area. This is how the Park Service, we manage by our units, our park service units and boundaries. Alaska Fish and Game manages by their game units. And so Anchorage and Eagle River are in game unit 14C. And so that's this area here. We are, in Chugach National Forest. We have Chugach State Park. We're in the mountains. We're in high resource-rich areas. So there's a lot of bears. We live with a lot of bears here, both black and brown. So regarding bear densities in our game unit, I can tell you from experience that bear surveys are extremely large, extremely expensive surveys, especially in Alaska. To do bear surveys in my park's 9.5 million acres, it's over, just to do one area is $500,000. And it requires aviation. So, the only way to do it is doing aerial surveys that we know of now. I'm trying to look at thermal imaging, putting thermal, infrared on a plane and flying around, because right now, trees preclude us from seeing bears. We have to do these surveys between the snow and green up, because once the trees start getting leaves, we can't see the bears anymore. So we can do these better in the tundra than we can do them here, because here it's just all forested. And until we can have thermal imaging and things, we won't be able to do them here. So the best way we get information on bear abundance here is looking at bear mortality as an index of population status, and unfortunately, it's a very inaccurate method. Because it depends on effort, how many hunters go out, how many, it's just not really saying much. But, there's a good amount of bears here, we know. I see them in my yard every year, so. So we know we live with bears, and the likelihood of encountering one near our homes is highly probable. And so we should always be vigilant, we should always be prepared. And so I'm on the Highland, you guys know the Highland web page, and I see people, this happens everywhere. When I lived in British Columbia, it happened too. People have this idea, who are inexperienced, that if a bear sees you, that's it. It's over for you. You're done. It's going to attack you, and that is not true. And so, I'll see posts every day, bear at mile marker 7.3, and it's by the time you've driven by there and then texted it and told us, the bear's not mile marker 7.3. And also, the bears live with us. We're sharing a habitat. We need to understand that. And when we put our food outside in these trash cans, it's not a bad bear that comes and looks for this food. It's a bear that's being intelligent. The bear smells food, it's going to go to it, and it's going to try to get it. They don't know ownership, and boundaries, and so just to keep that in mind. I think that it's in our nature to be very human-centric and not think from other perspectives. But bears and other animals have, I think life is precious, and we should be very responsible when taking it away. I believe in subsistence, and I believe in cultural, hunting for those purposes. But I think that we can mitigate defensive life and property kills and things like that. But if you need to kill a bear to protect yourself, obviously, I think you should. Okay, so off that soapbox. So whenever we're in bear territory, we are broadcasting signs. They have incredible olfactory capabilities, so they can smell things from miles away. So I say when we go out in the field, I take my non-smelling deodorant, because I like coconut smelling deodorant. I like to smell good and whatever, but I don't want to smell like food when I'm in here. I don't want to smell like milk and honey, So, you know, you want to be conscious of that. Be conscious of the fact that all novel items that we, you know, that
what are
we
those
bring.
for? What are those 4 items there?
Oh, it's like strawberry shampoo, what is it, coconut and lime deodorant, vanilla perfume, milk and honey deodorant.
Pilot's dream.
So, also novel items to bears encourage investigation. Again, they're very intelligent, they're very curious, so bold colored fabrics encourage investigation, but I prefer bold colored fabrics to camouflage, and that's because, again, most attacks are defensive, most attacks are due to surprise, and I don't want to surprise a bear. I want it to know I'm there from very far away, so if it sees my tent or whatever from far away, I'm happy about that. It's not going to stumble upon my tent and be like, oh my God, you know, I got to neutralize this threat, right? So when you're in there, when we're sharing the habitat, we need to be aware, you know, so wind direction is important, it carries our smell, you know. If you see carrion or you're near carrion, you want to be very, very careful, you know, carrion's dead animals, and often brown bears will protect their kill. And you can also, if you see like a lot of ravens flying over, that can give you a signal that there's a kill or some animal wildlife going on. If you smell something, another signal. I collected all these bear stats to show you all the different styles. No, I didn't. But these are all different types of bear scats. I mean, they can look even more different than this. They can be filled with seeds. They can be filled with. They can be black. They can be filled with plant material, bones, and obviously prints. We have like this is a salmon carcass. In fact, some bears in really, really resource-rich environments are so picky they'll only eat the brains of salmon, and they'll leave just the they'll eat brains and leave all the rest of the carcass. So that's a sign that bears have been there. But that's also a sign that bears are in a resource-rich environment, and they are being so choosy. As long as you don't surprise them, they don't want anything to do with you. These are like marks on trees, like a scratch mark. You also see like rub marks. You know, a lot of animals rub on trees, so you can see a lot of like rub marks. I just had a tree wash into my yard from the river, and it's got these really cool, deep claw marks and bite marks. I need to take a picture of it and add it. But yeah, so they also sleep during the day, so like, you know, they'll take naps and they have day beds. So yeah, again, another reason to be loud while you're in there. You don't want to wake them up all like right when you're up to their bed. Bone piles, etc. So there again are timing implications. So like, just think about like, are the bears in torpor, hibernation, because they can still be woken? Are they mating because the males are extremely territorial and ornery when they're mating? They're looking for a mate, and testosterone surging. And as we all know, testosterone can make us a little bit ornery and aggressive. Protecting cubs, the females protect their cubs voraciously. That's at least with brown bears. Younger bears, again, are curious. Older bears, as we know, Timothy, what was it? Well, there's a book over there. They called him, I can't remember, the Bear Man or something like that. He spent a lot of time, I think it was in Kenai, with the bears, and he spent years and years and years. Timothy Treadwell with bears, and he was trying to show, he was a little bit crazy, nutty, I have to say, but he was trying to show, you know, basically that bears are not something to fear, you know, that much. I mean, we need to have respectful, you know, fear of them, but and he was very successful for years and years. And then the story I heard was, you know, he normally left right before they start getting ready to go into hibernation or torpor, and he got on the plane. His partner was with him, and the stewardess was not friendly, and so he was like, I won't say what he said, but he was like, bleep this, and he got off the plane, and he brought his partner, and they went back out, and unfortunately, an older bear who did not get enough food before torpor and could not hunt efficiently because it was too old, attacked and killed them both and ate them. So that is something to be aware of, you know. Older, desperate bears can be very dangerous. So moving through terrain, it's important, you know, obviously avoidance is the big thing, you know. You want to make the noise appropriately. I can be a little annoying when I'm in the field to my field mates because I'm loud and I sing a lot and stuff, but I keep us safe, I say. You want to hike in groups, avoid areas of poor visibility, and just be vigilant. And just to say, like one of my friends says, when he's walking in our neighborhood, which I live in the mountains in Highland, like 8 miles in, and he's like, when I'm on the paved road, I feel safe. I don't bring anything out. I'm like, yeah, that's ridiculous. You know, means nothing to the brown bears up there. You know, when you're walking on the road, when you're jogging in the road, when you're in your yard. I mean, I have bear spray on me in my yard, and you know, and you just need to. I see people walking and jogging all the time without bear spray, and jogging especially because jogging and running from these animals, it triggers their instinct to chase. I mean, it is the last thing you want to do is jog and run from these animals, and that's really hard to do when these things are running at you. But it is the last thing you want to do. Every single person in every incident who has run from these animals, when they're in a group, they are the ones who are targeted. So do not run or jog when unnecessary. And if you're jogging for, you know, exercise, please bring bear spray. Okay, so now if avoidance is impossible, we move to deterrence. Let's see. So, yeah, I'm seeing where to abbreviate this. So, my dad is really bad at reading animals, really bad. Like, an animal can be pacing in front of him, panting in front of him, like, just giving every signal away that it's stressed, and he's like, from New York, and he's like, you know, really loud, and like, what? I'm not there. What's wrong with it? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what? How do you know it's stressed? I'm like, it's clearly panting and like salivating, and like, what do you mean? And so, like, some people are terrible at reading body language, and for those people, I just say, if you come upon a brown bear, just assume it's being defensive and you want to react accordingly. If you come upon a black bear that's attacking you, assume it's being predatory and act accordingly. If, however, you can read animals, then your strategy changes. And you want to look at, is this animal being defensive? If so, I want to act non-threatening. Is this animal being predatory? If so, I need to fight for my life. Okay? And it's hard if you haven't experienced and seen bear behavior a lot. It can be hard sometimes because they aren't completely social like us. So their behavior is a little, you know, less obvious than ours. Sometimes like a little twitch of their nose can mean something that we have no clue. So there's a lot of good websites that you can watch, a lot of great bear videos, and I have a few coming up. And if we don't have time to watch them, you can write them down and watch them yourself. So it is important to identify behavioral differences between curiosity, defense, and predation. The Park Service recommends a minimum distance of 300 yards. I honestly could not tell you how far 300 yards is for me. I know it's far. And I think it's inevitable you will come much closer to a bear. So you just want to try to decrease your, or increase your space between bears as much as possible. And you want to divert widely around the bear. Don't directly approach a bear. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll talk about, I have some things here I think to add. Obviously, if you've never experienced a bear, if you ever encountered a bear before, you're going to be nervous, that's normal. But I think once you do encounter a bear and don't have an experience like Timo, then you'll get a little more comfortable. So there's different interaction types, again, non-defensive and defensive. So non-defensive are curious bears, human-habituated bears, food-conditioned bears, bears that are dominance testing and predatory, and then there's defensive where they feel threatened. You will know if a bear is vocalizing, it is defensive. They only vocalize when they're being defensive, when they're agitated or stressed. And then charges, almost all charges are bluff charges, but you don't want to find out. Right? So like get your bear spray out and have it ready, and we're going to talk about that soon, how to use bear spray. So, unfortunately, a lot of the behaviors can be very similar. When a bear is focused on you and they're gradually approaching, appearing under concern, sometimes it can go either way. So it isn't always that easy to tell. So some signs of communication and body language and vocalization are, bear vocalization we call bluster. That's the scientific term. And it's basically harmless communication done by a nervous bear. And honestly, if a bear is communicating with you, it is exactly what you want. This is a good bear that doesn't want to have any conflict with you. It's just telling you, hey, I'm not comfortable, you're too close, so back off. And if you don't back off, then I'm going to go to the next step, So, but this bluster can be very scary, They will clack their teeth, they'll chomp, they'll pop their jaws, they'll rush and charge you, they'll pounce on the ground, they'll stomp, they'll slap, slap in the air, they'll blow forcefully, they'll make grunting and throat noises, and then when they're extremely scared and submissive, they'll moan. And I've heard them do that, it's sad. Again, if they're communicating with you this way, you want to just back away. You want to talk to them calmly. You want to reassure them you're not harmed. You want to, be as non-threatening as possible. Get low, back away, and make them feel more comfortable. So I can tell you a story at the end if we have time. So here's I don't have internet connection here, so I may have to just send you these. Or take a picture of them.
You can share that. I can put it on the Finish Club list.
Okay, great. I really recommend watching these. They're great.
Yeah.
So, and this bear.org is a wonderful website, and really you can't go wrong. I guarantee there's not misinformation on the site. Not a lot, anyway. There may be a little, but not a lot. All right, so we're almost done. So again, I think this is kind of repetitive, but response to defensive bears, never ever run, always have your bear spray easily accessible, and we're going to talk about different deterrents in a minute. Any questions about this part? Because I think we've kind of covered it pretty thoroughly. Okay. Let's see.
So should I look bigger or smaller at that point?
You should look smaller. And I'll tell you, so this is what I heard. Where were you? You were with your dog. And where were you?
No, not me.
Oh, who was? Oh, thank you. I keep looking at you. Thank you. You were with your dog.
He's so much better looking.
It looks like brothers.
Okay, you were with your dog.
Yeah, it was 8:30 in the morning.
Okay, and where were you?
Barbara Falls. You had
Okay.
a life during
Yeah. Okay, so it was the Barbara Falls incident.
Yeah.
Okay. And you had bear spray, great. And your dog got between the mother and the cub?
Well, the dog was right in front of me. I was walking trail this way. The bear with the cub was walking the same trail towards me.
Eesh, okay.
So that was, and it happened so fast at that point. Dog reacted, the mama bear reacted, dog ran at it, missed it just barely, hit probably the cub because they were kind of side by side. I thought they were gonna maul the dog, honestly.
Yeah.
Then I thought that maybe the dog fell in the river because I couldn't see it. And then I had time to take, I saw the mama running towards me. But saw running towards me. I took 3 steps to the side because there was a tree right there. I was hoping that whatever 500 pounds coming at me, not gonna knock me down.
Good, yeah.
So I pulled my bear spray out. I wasn't fast enough. It took a shortcut because I was thinking that maybe the bear follows the trail. And then it knocked me down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that fast.
And then you had your arm up?
Yeah, so what happened was that when he knocked me down, I fell on my back, rolled on my stomach, put my left hand on my neck.
Good.
And meanwhile, he was jumping on my back like
Oh,
this
gosh.
with the paws on the side. And I was trying to reach my bear spray between the jumps, and then it just bit my elbow and turned me around. And once it turned me around, when my left hand came automatically out, I put the bear spray. My right hand wouldn't work anymore, but I was able to get the trigger off and sprayed it. But it was coming towards the face at that point because I couldn't. If I would have extended my arm, I would have hit the bear.
Yeah.
So I had to spray it so close. And then it turned around, went about 4 feet out, and turned around and came again. So I was just tracking it, waiting it, sprayed again. And then he looked right to left, I remember, and then it just went probably after the cub, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, of course, with all the blood and stuff, from the sides and the elbow, and I don't know, I hit my lip somehow, I don't know why. But I backed up, like you said, I didn't turn my back towards it, backed up about 20 feet, waited for if it's going to come again, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So then I just looked for my cell phone, I couldn't find it, and then I had to hike back towards the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Which you're familiar with.
Yeah, so that is exactly what a brown bear mother would do, especially when you come so close. And that, unfortunately, is a time when the dog was bad for you. That 12% of the time.
But historically, I've been living there for 20 years, seen multiple bears. Some are there, and I guard all the time, the neighborhood. And the dogs that always scare the black bear away each time. We never had an issue.
Yeah.
And it was one of those. The surprising thing was the speed it happened.
Oh, I know. They have a burst speed of 40 miles per hour.
When it happened, the bear was maybe from here to the wall.
Yeah.
And I didn't have time to pull the bear spray out fast enough before it was on me.
Yeah, exactly.
So my biggest advice to everybody is that don't keep it in your backpack.
No. Oh, no. And I'm going to show you where, I have a number of things to show you about that. So you did really well. I mean, and it's another, it shows that bear spray works. I mean, that mother was trying to neutralize you. She was trying to neutralize the threat to her cub, and that was her goal. And you chased her off with bear spray. Had you not, it could have ended very differently.
He didn't care much about me screaming or kicking at him. He
no.
just didn't get it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, we're going to talk about that because you don't want to fight in that situation. As much as you want to fight in that situation, you want to basically pretend you're dead, like that bear has neutralized you, and then as soon as you stop fighting and it feels like the threat's over, it should be over. But that can be after a lot of damage. That can be after it kills you. So, but yeah, okay, so we're going to go through that. But when I heard the story, I knew that I was very, very confident it was a brown bear, because black bears, again, they don't defend their cubs. They just don't. So, yeah. Okay, we'll talk about it.
But the Fish and Wildlife went out there with a couple other guys with the shotguns and found the site and all that stuff. And they actually used a drone to locate the bear. And so they knew still had the cub with it and all that stuff. So they didn't neutralize the bear for that reason. Nice for them to bring my cell phone back because they So what was surprising surprising to me in ER is that they take so much DNA samples just to see what kind of bear it is,
Right.
what's the problem bear,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's awesome. We can genotype saliva. We can genotype footprints in snow. We can genotype scat, and we can identify individual animals with that. So yeah, that's how they can know, is this a problem bear. If this happened again and they got the same saliva, they can identify this female and say, okay, she's done this more than once. We need to take care of her. Yeah, it's incredible, and I'm sure they treated you with a lot of antibiotics, probably left your wounds open.
Yeah, left the wounds open.
Yeah,
Just sort of bleed out, and
Yeah.
then antibiotics.
yeah, yeah. Wow. You did all the right things, and you were also lucky, so. But I'll talk about a few things that, I'm not sure what that you may have been able to do better. So, like not having the bear spray in your backpack, for sure. Like I said, yes, they close they close distance at incredibly fast speeds. They have a burst speed of 40 miles per hour. And you want to spray your bear spray when they're 30, 40 feet away. And it looks like it was, you saw it when it was that close. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about it. All right, so I think we also covered, non-defensive bears. We're going to go into it a little bit more. The non-defensive bears are most often these harmless encounters that we have, and these are the ones that we want to have. So you just don't, when you come across a bear and it's not being defensive, you just don't want to give it a reason to be. I always just get down like I'm talking to a dog that I don't know. I get down on my knees and I talk calmly to the bear. And I had an incident, or I had a very close bear encounter in the Arctic, out in the wilderness, and we were floating the Anasac, which is a very narrow tributary of the Noatak, and we came around the corner, saw a brown bear, which I have a great picture of him at the end, and we were very close right away, so I said, okay, let's get off on the opposite shore. It was like 2 feet of water, it really wasn't barrier. And the bear was a little further away. I let it know we were there. We got down on our knees. I got my bear spray out, and it started gradually approaching us. I could tell it wasn't surprised. It wasn't being defensive. It was kind of curious. And so as it gradually approached us, I was like, okay, let's get some more space between us. So we stood up to back up, and when we stood up, it stood up. And I was like, okay, let's get back down. So as soon as we got back down, it sat back down. It literally sat down. And then we just kind of watched each other. And they can stand up for many reasons. It stood up earlier to get our scent, They have, their eyesight is about the same as ours, maybe a tiny bit better, but their olfactory capabilities is insane. So they can smell, like crazy. So they'll stand up to smell, they'll stand up to say, hey, look at me, I'm big, don't mess with me. And so, yeah, so my reaction definitely, mitigated any bad experience with that bear, for sure. I think if I started acting aggressive, it would have been a completely different story. Okay, so deterrence. So first of all, never, ever go out without a deterrent. And always bring a backup. So when I go into the field, they drop me off in the middle of nowhere, and it could be days before they're able to pick me back out again. So I have to bring, I bring at least 3 bear sprays, because once I've expired one, I have nothing, and if it's a problem bear and it keeps coming back, I need to have enough, so, if you're just around your home, obviously one bear spray is fine, So like I said, my wife and I we never leave our house without the bear spray. When we're in our driveway, when we're in our yard, we use the bear spray. And they've done a lot of research on the efficacy of bear spray, and they've done a lot of research on the efficacy of guns. And I know a lot of Alaskans don't like to hear this, but hands down, bear spray is far more effective than guns. It's 98% effective according to the research. And across the board, experts suggest that only people extremely proficient with firearms and in extreme conditions, such as when you have a sudden encounter with a bear, you should rely on guns for protection. When I was at this bear workshop, we have National Park Service law enforcement, and they work sometimes with the FBI, and they were talking to the FBI. This guy was talking to the FBI about his friend, who's an FBI, about accuracy under pressure. So how accurate are FBI agents under pressure? These guys who shoot guns every single day, they are only like 35% accurate under pressure. I mean, that's with a handgun, and a shotgun's different with a slug, right? But still, I don't shoot guns every day. I'm not going to rely on my accuracy when a bear is charging me. No way. Bear spray exits the can at 70 miles per hour. It is affected by wind. I've tried it in very windy Kotzebue at times. But what happens is it just disperses the cloud quicker. So you just need to spray it when the bear's a little closer. The object of bear spray is to put a cloud of bear spray in front of you so that the bear has to run through it to get to you. And remember, for me, a bear's head is almost about my head, but for those of you taller, you're spraying lower, right? So you want the bear's face to come into contact with it. But there's a lot of research, and I can share them with you, on the efficacy of bear spray and the efficacy of guns. And some of the research on the efficacy of guns has shown that that the people that were able to, one study showed that people who had guns and were actually able to use them, and the people that had guns and were not able to use them had the same rate of injury and outcome. So and another thing is, if you shoot a gun at a bear and it doesn't kill the bear, now the bear, you're even a bigger threat to the bear, and they take a number of shots to take down a bear, even with bear slugs, a number of shots. I recommend bear spray. You use what I also recommend bear spray because I'm a bear conservationist. But it really is far more effective. So, and again, I can send you those studies because I don't want to go too much into it. I don't want to bore you too much. So in other data, no person carrying bear spray was killed when they look at incidents. Only minor injuries were received for anyone carrying bear spray. Let's see. I have a lot of info in here. But, okay, so this is my belt of choice. They have a number that are a different brand. I don't work for SCAT. I don't get to Michigan. It has an iPhone holder, which is nice. But it's really cool because it doesn't dangle around. And you can just really quickly pull it out. Whatever you're using, I suggest that you practice. You just want the muscle memory, because when you're in this, very stressful environment, you can't have to think. You have to be able to just react. So I just play with it all the time. When I'm hiking, I pull it out, I snap the little thing off, and I act like I'm spraying it. Pull it out, snap the thing off, and you just want to make sure that you can do that very quickly, because that's what it takes. Let's see. And then, when you're spraying, I usually do, I do an inert bear spray training course. But basically you want to like spray back and forth. You want to express the whole can. It was good that you didn't the first time though, because you had some left. So I mean, use your discretion. You can express half the can and see if that works. If it doesn't, use the rest. But again, you generally spray when they're charging bears about 30 feet away. So it's very close, unfortunately, when you start spraying. And then, oh no, we'll get that into that. Oh, bear spray has a shelf life of 4 years. Expired, they've done research on expiration of bear spray, and it can still work. It varies far past expiration dates. Like the propellant gets out a little bit, like 1.8% per year or something, but the active ingredient, capsaicin, is still there. So, so I'm comfortable using expired bear spray. So I kind of take the Park Service expired bear spray, so I don't have to spend my own money. Let's see. Okay, one thing that some people do is they will spray their tent with bear spray, or they spray their clothes with bear spray. Yeah, why? I don't know. They think it's a repellent. No, you're just spicing yourself by that point. You're just making yourself tastier. So, unfortunately, TSA doesn't allow you to take bear spray. So, like when when you're going to like the bush, it's hard to, you got to kind of go to one of their villages and get some there, but or you can send hazmat there if you need. But, all right, let's see. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about camping much because we're talking about more neighborhoods. But like with camping and with neighborhoods, you want to make sure you never reward a bear with food. So they should never be able to get into your trash can, because once they do, you've just rewarded them, and you've just, that behavior is going, you've propagated that behavior, So I built like my own like little kind of shed for my garbage can, because I hate it in the garage. The garage is my shop, and then it stinks up my shop. So the bears have tried to get into it multiple times. There's some chunks out of the wood, but I've put some now like metal flanging on it so they can't get into it. I have a huge metal chain so they're not getting into it. And you just got to do what you have to do. Once you build it, it's there. You have it forever, and it's very helpful. And then when you're camping, you need to have like bear-resistant containers. Those Kevlar bags do not work. They are claimed to be bear-resistant. They're not. Studies have shown the bears can rip them up. If you have them hanging in a tree, that's a different story. I work in the tundra. There's no trees, so we have to use like these big bear cans or boxes. So. Just make sure around your house, if you don't want them, they can open car doors, by the way. They know how to do that. They can open house doors, just you need to lock your doors. Because they're smart, So, let's see. Okay, so now, once our deterrent fails, we need to go into attack mode. Survival mode, sorry. And you did the right thing. You want to protect your neck and head. They go for the face first. And you want to stay face down. Everyone's got their different opinions. Like some people say get in a fetal position. I believe face down's the best way, especially if you have a pack on your back, because that's a little bit protective. You want to spread your legs so they can't roll you over, and if they do roll you over, you want to roll over again. You want to protect your belly, you want to protect the front of your neck and your face, and then put your hands behind your neck, because that's your most vulnerable parts. And in the case of these defensive bears, their goal is to neutralize you. And so you want to, really play dead, Fighting back, they found, only prolongs the attack, and always results in more serious injuries. Since 1970, people who played dead when attacked by a bear during surprise encounters received only minor injuries 75% of the time. However, those that fought back during surprise encounters received very severe injuries 80% of the time. So as much as we want to fight back during these incidents, you just have to try not to.
Did all those who played dead ever came back to tell us that?
Good point. Well, we unfortunately find their remains. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not an easy, thing to study always. So one caveat is after you're laying still and you've played dead and the bear starts exploring, nipping and biting, and basically starting to take bites of you and eat you, that's it. It's over. Now you gotta fight for your life. But typically that doesn't happen with defensive bears. Let's see. Again, data show that 90% of cases when a second person returns to help someone being mauled, the bear leaves. Once the bear is gone and leaves the area, you want to make sure that you stay on the ground until you know the bear leaves. And I have to imagine that time is dilated during these things, and that minutes probably feel like hours, and it's probably hard to know how much time has gone by. But you really don't want to get up until that bear is gone, because then it believes you're still a threat. So you just want to stay there until you know it's gone, and then you want to go the opposite way. And let's see. Yeah, and when you go the opposite way, again, make noise so that you're not startling another bear. If like the bear went the direction you have to go, you just have to divert very wide. And then, so for predatory bears, and like this is again, if a defensive bear turns predatory, you are fighting for your life. So to lay down for a predatory bear is akin to serving yourself up as a meal. So you want to fight with everything you have: rocks, keys, knives, guns, bear spray, whatever you have. And again, most times predatory bears are black bears. So most of the times, if a black bear attacks you, this is the reason why. That's why this is my bear. This is that bear that I told you about, that experience I had. He was kind of young actually, but good size. So anyway, that's all.
That's good.